Joki's ex-girlfriend has cancer. I anonymously sent her a sum of money, but it was still discovered. Joki threw the card in my face. We're already married. What else are you dissatisfied with, that you have to humiliate a dying person with money? I looked at him quietly. You were the one who proposed to me, Joki. The day we found out that Joki's ex-girlfriend had cancer was supposed to be our anniversary trip. I was packing my luggage and turned to ask Joki for his opinion. Should we bring that dark green tie? He stood where he was, staring straight at his phone screen, as if he had lost all his senses. Joki? I called out again, and he looked up as if waking from a dream. Suyu. I was taken aback. What's wrong? Suyu is going to die. After saying this, he didn't look at me again and turned to walk out the door. He walked so fast as if 1 second slower, and he would never see that person again. By the time I followed to the hospital, Joki had already found Suyu in the ward. He somberly flipped through her diagnosis report, and then asked her, "When did this happen?" Suyu was curled up into a small ball on the hospital bed, her face pale and almost transparent. It was found during last month's health checkup. The doctor said it's already too late, impossible to cure. Before she could finish, she saw me standing at the door and suddenly burst into tears. "I'm sorry, Sister Wency. I didn't mean to disturb your marriage. I'm just too scared. I'm only 24. I don't want to die." Joki turned around and saw me following her gaze. His expression instantly darkened. His eyes filled with reproach. "What are you doing here?" Bringing up the anniversary trip we had planned, because we never went on a honeymoon now, seemed utterly inappropriate. So I lowered my gaze and said soothingly to Suyu, "I came to see if there's anything I can help with." "There's no need." Before Suyu could speak, Joki had already spoken first, his tone extremely stiff. "You should go back." Before leaving, as if compelled by some unseen force, I glanced back. Joki had already pulled Suyu into his arms, holding her tightly. Suyu's small face rested on his shoulder. Her eyes closed, tears seemingly endless. "I only have you left," she sobbed, murmuring, "Joki, I have nothing, only you." Joki held her even tighter, his voice choked. "I know." It seemed that between them, there had always been mutual affection, never separation. I stared blankly at this scene. An overwhelming tide of emotions surged within me, yet I could do nothing. In the face of death, any emotions from those who are healthy and still alive are seen as inconsiderate. Joki and I grew up together and started dating when we were 16. Later, some changes occurred in my family, and I had no choice but to go abroad. Since the duration was uncertain, I broke up with Joki. He was furious, saying I didn't trust him, and refused to try a long-distance relationship. But on the day I left, he came to the airport to see me off with red-rimmed eyes. "AC, I'll wait for you to come back. No matter how long, I'll keep waiting for you." Because of those words, during the most difficult days, I stubbornly persevered alone, completing in 3 years what should have taken 5. But by the time I returned, Joki already had a new girlfriend by his side. A petite but pretty girl named Suyu, a junior at his university. I heard she had pursued Joki for a long time, devoted herself unreservedly for 2 years, and only then did Joki reluctantly agree to be with her. After returning, we childhood friends gathered once, and someone mentioned Suyu. She just throws herself at him. Wherever Brother Key goes, she follows. If he drinks, she accompanies him to sober up in the breeze. If he's ill, she makes porridge and takes care of him. I heard she wanted to come along to our gathering today. Joki frowned, clearly not in a good mood. "Don't mention her." Right, I forgot. Now that Wency is back, Brother Key should draw a clear line with her. I instinctively glanced at Joki. He wasn't looking at me but was staring down at his phone screen, his expression somber and cold. That gathering did not end pleasantly. Afterwards, Joki asked if he should drive me home, but seeing the hidden anxiety in his expression, I guessed he wasn't really that keen on taking me. So I said quietly, "No need. I didn't drink and I drove myself." He seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and drove off. It was only much later that I learned that day was Suyu's birthday. She was at the highest point of the Ferris wheel, holding a cake and sending a photo of a forced smile. Joki sped all the way and finally reached her side just before midnight. After returning home, the half-packed luggage was still spread out in the bedroom. I picked out the clothes from the suitcase one by one and put them away. When I reached the toiletry bag, I paused. Inside was an electric razor, a bit old, in a bright sky blue color, not something Joki would buy. So who gave it to him? The answer was obvious. I stared at it for a moment, then put it away in a drawer. After dark, Joki finally returned. His eyes were bloodshot, the corners slightly red, his expression carrying a trace of bewildered desolation. I went up to him and looked at him. I've cancelled the flights and hotel. When we visit your parents this weekend, we should tell them that the things we promised to bring might not be possible this time, and we'll buy more next time we go abroad. I was just calmly explaining the aftermath of this aborted trip. But Joki suddenly got angry. He stared into my eyes, his tone unpleasant. Why do you need to tell me about such trivial matters? Can't you handle it yourself? I was stunned for a second. Somehow, I suddenly remembered many years ago when we first started dating. We attended the same secondary school, but we're in different classes. Some girls in my class gave me trouble, so I contacted their parents. As a result, after school, a few of them, even more resentful, cornered me in the equipment room. Due to my upbringing, I was used to handling things myself, and I hadn't told Joki about any of this. But he still rushed there, chased away those girls, then turned to me angrily. Why didn't you tell me when you were in trouble? I could handle it myself. But I'm your boyfriend. Joki, still a teenager back then, said angrily. For the next 2 weeks, he even came to our class for evening self-study. He spent a long time gradually changing my mindset, making me instinctively share things with him and inform him of what I was doing. And now, he tells me, why do you need to tell me about such trivial matters? Can't you handle it yourself? As if sensing his own loss of control, Joki paused slightly and softened his tone. I'm sorry, AC. I'm just a bit upset. I took a deep breath. I'm going to shower. When I came out of the bathroom, Joki was not in the room. I looked around and found him on the second-floor terrace, smoking one cigarette after another. Joki wasn't a heavy smoker. Back when he had a big argument with Suyu and broke up with her, not long after, he proposed to me. That day, Suyu was also at the proposal scene. She stood there, pale, crying bitterly. Joki saw her but said nothing. Only that night, I woke up to find him smoking on the balcony, staring straight at the northern night sky with its few sparse stars. That direction happened to be where the city's tallest Ferris wheel was located. Like last time, I said nothing and silently returned to the bedroom. Perhaps I caught a chill. When I woke up the next morning, I had a splitting headache. I already suffered from migraines. While rummaging for painkillers, Joki suddenly rushed out of the bathroom, strode over to me, his expression extremely dark. His voice was filled with suppressed, obvious anger. Where's my razor? My temples throbbed painfully. Before I could speak, Joki suddenly grabbed my wrist. Wensi, where is my razor? He asked again, his grip so strong it hurt. I gasped sharply in pain. In the bedside table drawer. Joki said nothing, turning to look for that razor Suyu had given him. I shook my reddened wrist, found the painkillers, and swallowed 2 pills. The cancer that had suddenly befallen Suyu had completely consumed Joki's attention, so he had no time to spare for my headache. Of course, it was just a minor, insignificant ailment, at least to him. In the following days, Joki didn't go to work. He contacted almost all the top oncologists in the entire city. The conclusions they gave him were all the same. Suyu's cancer was already in its late stages. No matter how they treated it, they could only prolong her life a little. Each time this result was confirmed, the pain on Joki's face deepened. That evening, I drove home from work and happened to see Joki and Suyu in the garden. Compared to the last time I saw her, Suyu had lost more weight. She had changed out of the blue and white striped hospital gown and was wearing a burgundy slip dress, sitting on the garden swing. The golden red light of the setting sun washed over her, faintly warming her pale face. And my husband, Joki, was kneeling on one knee before her, applying lipstick to her colourless lips. I sat in the car, quietly watching this scene. In that moment I couldn't help but think, Perhaps the biggest regret in Joki's life was marrying me. I sat at a nearby bar until late at night. It seemed Joki finally remembered there was still a me in the world, so he called, "AC, where are you?" Before I could answer, the sound of a band playing filtered into the phone from my end. Joki's voice paused. "I'll come pick you up." When he arrived, the band had already finished their last song and left the stage. I sat in a corner, an untouched mojito on the table. Joki stood before me, the dim light falling on his face, giving him a strangely solemn look. "Why did you come here alone, to drink?" "I didn't drink," I said. "I just ordered a drink to sit and listen to the music." Hearing this, Joki's expression softened slightly. He took my hand. "Let's go, home." When I got into the car, I smelled a familiar scent of disinfectant. Obviously, he had sent Suyu back to the hospital before finally remembering me. So I asked, "How has Suyu been lately?" In fact, since learning of her condition, I had maintained a tacit silence in front of Joki these days. This was the first time I brought it up. He couldn't avoid it and had to answer. "Not well. I've arranged the best doctors for her treatment, but the situation still isn't optimistic." As if realizing the impropriety of his words, he added, "AC, don't misunderstand. I just feel I wasn't good to her before and want to make it up." That was the truth. I had heard from friends in the country that Joki had always been very bad to Suyu. 6 months after I went abroad, Joki met Suyu. Because he helped her solve a problem, Suyu was extremely grateful to Joki. This gratitude quickly evolved into a young girl's burgeoning love. For the next 2 years, no matter how coldly Joki treated her, or how sarcastic his words were, she always maintained extreme passion. Finally, he was moved. But even when they were dating, Suyu gave more. Thinking of this, I let out a long sigh. Besides, she's going to die. When he said this, Joki's voice even held a hint of a sob. This sense of helplessness and guilt that healthy, intact people feel in the face of an unbeatable illness. I had actually experienced it myself. Because of this, I appeared so powerless now. Even though Joki was my husband. Even though I was his legal spouse. The rest of the car ride was silent. Walking through the garden after returning home, I instinctively paused for a second in front of that swing. Joki turned back and asked me, "What's wrong?" I shook my head. Nothing. It hurt my eyes. When I suggested going to the hospital with Joki to visit Suyu, his first reaction was to stare at me warily. I pretended not to notice. "Is that not okay?" After several seconds, Joki finally responded, "Fine." Perhaps the recent treatment had been somewhat effective, as Suyu looked much better. After chatting for a bit, she suddenly mentioned wanting to leave the hospital and work. "I know I can't really be cured, but for these last few months of my life, I still want to live as normally as possible. Is that okay?" She looked at Joki with hope. How could he refuse? Joki suggested arranging for Suyu to work at his family's company. Suyu immediately shook her head. "No, that would be using connections. I want to find a job fairly, based on my own abilities." Unsurprisingly, Joki came to me. "I'll pay her salary myself. You don't need to assign her any work. It won't affect you." I couldn't help but curl my lips slightly, asking sarcastically, "Joki, what exactly do you take me for?" He was slightly taken aback. Then he sighed. "But she's ill." "Yes, she's ill. Has cancer, is going to die. So whatever she wants to do, we healthy people must unconditionally accommodate her." After a long while, I fished a business card from my bag and handed it to him, saying flatly, "I'll give you HR's contact. Have her submit her CV and go through the normal interview process." Joki ultimately didn't take the card. He just looked at me with an extremely cold gaze, as if meeting me for the first time. "Wency, being so petty with someone who's dying, you make me feel afraid." Long after Joki walked away, I remained standing there, motionless, maintaining the last shred of dignity, until a young girl came up behind me, patted my shoulder, and reminded me softly in my ear, "Miss, your trousers are stained." I snapped back to reality and thanked her. Actually, I had felt back pain since getting up in the morning. Just now in the hospital corridor, my period had arrived early. Joki's thoughts were completely occupied with Suyu. He hadn't even noticed me buying a pack of sanitary pads at the small shop and going to the toilet. Many years ago, when I had my first period, it happened at school. It was a mess, and it was Joe Key who went to the school shop to buy me sanitary pads, and then took off his school jacket to tie around my waist. But that was only the 14-year-old Joe Key. I had my assistant investigate some matters regarding Sue Yu. It wasn't much different from what I imagined. She had a tragic background. Parents who didn't love her. Had lived in poverty all along. Joe Key was the only light shining on her. If Joe Key hadn't stepped in to help, she probably couldn't even afford the cancer treatment. So I had my assistant transfer a sum of money to Sue Yu's account, in the name of her family. Not letting her into my company was my bottom line in defending this marriage. Giving her this money was a touch of compassion, as one human being to another. I just hadn't expected Joe Key to find out. That night, I returned home. As soon as I turned on the light, I saw him standing outside the entrance hall, a few steps away, looking at me expressionlessly. I was a bit surprised. "You're back so early today?" What answered me was a bank card suddenly flung over, hitting the corner of my eye. A sharp pain spread from my temple. Then the ache gradually intensified, making my fingers curl. Joe Key strode over to me, gripping my wrist forcefully, his voice filled with anger. "We're already married. What else are you dissatisfied with, that you have to humiliate a sick person with money?" I didn't. "Wency, you've had a wealthy, happy family since childhood, went abroad to the best schools, entered your family's company as soon as you returned. I broke up with her and proposed to you. You've sailed smoothly all the way to today. You lack nothing, but she has nothing. Does humiliating her elevate your noble status even further?" I closed my eyes. Countless past images flashed through my mind like slides, like a fragmented film. Joe Key. I tried to keep my voice as calm as usual, but a tremor still crept in. "You can't talk to me like this. You can't." Joe Key let go of my hand, took a step back, looked at me, and seemed to want to say something. But just then, his phone rang. Taking it out, Sue Yu's name flashed on the screen. Joe Key's expression changed slightly. Without hesitation, he brushed past me and went out the door. I stared at the hanging painting on the wall and lightly pressed the wound at the corner of my eye. The pain worsened. For several days after that night, Joe Key didn't come home. He never contacted me, but I still knew that Sue Yu's condition had worsened. The pain was unbearable, so she called Joe Key, crying. Joe Key, who had once shielded me in any situation, chose without hesitation to go to her. I went to a hospital far away for a full physical. The doctor told me gravely, "Miss Wen, you must find appropriate ways to vent your emotions. It would be good for you." I was silent for a long time. "Thank you, but there's no one I can vent to." Who could I tell? During those 3 years abroad, at the worst point, I had a stomach hemorrhage and passed out, taken to the hospital by a classmate I didn't know. Leaving the hospital, passing through a quiet street, I unfortunately encountered a street shootout. A bullet struck my side diagonally. I was already used to being alone. Besides, at that time, Joe Key and I were broken up. Later, after returning, he already had Sue Yu by his side. I couldn't tell him then. Agreeing to Joe Key's proposal did hold a bit of selfishness, because on countless nights when I felt I couldn't go on, thinking of that teenager at the airport with red-rimmed eyes, saying he would wait for me always, a bit of courage would well up again in my parched heart. As I thought about the past, I slowly walked out of the hospital's main entrance. Suddenly, someone stood in front of me. Looking up, it was Joe Key. He was staring at me, his face frighteningly cold, his voice carrying a hint of panic. "AC, what are you doing at the hospital?" I was stunned for 2 seconds, then suddenly realized. He was afraid I was like Sue Yu. So I laughed dryly, just to check up. Joe Key didn't believe me. I had to take the medical report from my bag and hand it to him. I specifically left out the one from the psychologist. According to the data, my body had no major issues. Joe Key, with a somber face, carefully flipped through the report twice, then stared at the line, "Old injury to the lower back, no major concern," and asked me, "What is this injury? Why have I never heard you mention it?" I was taken aback. "Oh, when I was abroad, I ran into a shootout once and got a minor injury." When we got in the car, Joe Key's eyes were as cold as ice. Feeling helpless, I stared at the receding scenery outside the window for a while, then decided to say a few more words. Don't worry. I understand my own body. I get checkups every year. I won't be like Sue. Why didn't you call me? He suddenly interrupted me, then slammed on the brakes, pulled the car over, unfastened his seatbelt, and leaned towards me. I knew he was asking about today's checkup, so I looked at him very calmly. It was just a routine checkup. Hasn't Suyu's condition been unstable these past few days? Mentioning Suyu, a complex emotion flashed in his eyes, like jealousy or anger. But in the end, the topic returned to me, though his voice was no longer so confident. You should have told me when you were so badly injured back then, AC. This time, I really laughed out loud. When I was injured, I paused slightly. It must have been exactly the day you were finally moved by Suyu's persistent pursuit and agreed to be with her. Joki. After the bullet was removed, I saw your Weibo from my hospital bed. For the next few days, Joki's attitude towards me suddenly became very enthusiastic. Apart from the demanding intimate life, even when I left work each day, Joki's car was waiting for me downstairs. In a daze, it felt like being 18 again. Back then, there was nothing between us except sincere, ardent love. I turned things over and over in my mind, considering and guessing, and finally told him, you don't need to feel guilty. Back then, we were separated by half the globe. Even if you'd known, there was nothing you could do. The smile on Joki's lips vanished instantly. He took a deep breath. I'm not compensating you. Wency, you are my wife. We've only been married a little over a year. This state is what's normal. Before I could say anything, Joki's phone on the console suddenly lit up. It was a message from Suyu. Joki, quite uncharacteristically, ignored it. I asked him, how is Suyu? Joki gave a cold laugh. What does it have to do with me? There are plenty of people who want to take care of her anyway. I'm not the only one. I thought, if he looked in the rearview mirror now, he would see his own eyes reflected there, full of burning jealousy. I soon learned why that was. At the end of the month, I went to visit an elder who was in the hospital, and he happened to be in the same hospital as Suyu. Passing by Suyu's room, I saw her sitting on the bed in her hospital gown, using her thin, bony fingers to dial a number over and over. By the bed stood a young man in black with a baseball cap. He glanced at me in the doorway with gloomy eyes, then said very gently to Suyu, don't call anymore. After all, he's married now. He has to go back to his wife. You still have me. Suyu seemed not to hear, just kept dialing Joki's number, crying and sobbing. Don't ignore me, Joki. You said you'd stay with me till the end. I admit in that moment I envied her, because my life had moved along a predetermined path, and I'd never had a choice. When I got home, Joki had already made dinner. I mentioned casually, I saw Suyu today. She seems to have lost more weight. Joki stared at me, his expression instantly turning serious. Why did you go see her? That gaze was like a sharp knife, instantly waking me from my self-deluding dream. I laughed mockingly. Don't be nervous. I didn't go to cause trouble. I just happened to pass by while visiting someone else. I didn't mean it that way, Joki said, avoiding my eyes. Perhaps as compensation, he suggested going on a date next month for my birthday. Watch a midnight movie, 2 back-to-back, then go to the seaside together to watch the sunrise. I should have refused, but he was looking at me so intently, and the plan he proposed was exactly what we did together on my 16th birthday. Back then, I was suffocating under the pressure. Even though Joki didn't know what was happening, he keenly sensed my low spirits. So in the middle of the night, he knocked on my window and took me away. We watched 2 movies together, First Love and Roman Holiday. When the movies ended, the sky was faintly turning white. Joki rode his bike with me along the coastal road. Finally, he stopped the bike at the edge of a cliff. The golden sun slowly rose from the sea, and he confessed to me. But that was a long, long time ago. So long that he had to recreate these things with me, to recapture those details scattered in memory. So I agreed. I said okay, like that night when I was 16. Even watching the exact same movies, I couldn't recapture the feeling from back then. Like, When I was with Joki, I always kept reminiscing about the past. That meant the present him could no longer balance my love and disappointment. I was just unwilling, always clinging to those times in the past when he held me back, keeping me from falling. Realizing this, I shifted my focus to Joki beside me. He wasn't watching the movie either. He seemed agitated. Occasionally, he would take out his phone, glance at it, then put it back as if stung. I quietly reminded him, "It's vibrating. Someone's calling you." Joki forced a smile. "Ignore it. Today I'm here to celebrate your birthday." Pitifully and laughably, I actually believed that. When the movie ended, Joki answered Suyu's 28th call. Desperate weeping came through. "Joki, being sick is so hard. I threw up a lot of blood. Am I going to die soon, Joki?" Under my gaze, Joki calmly put away his phone, then leaned over and kissed my cheek. "I'm going to the toilet." Then he never came back. I waited a long time outside that remote but seaside private cinema, then finally called Joki. His phone was off. Hanging up, I saw Suyu had sent me a friend request on WeChat. I accepted. She soon sent several messages. "I'm sorry, Sister Wency. I know today is your birthday. I just ... Really wanted to prove how important I am to him. You are Joki's white moonlight. No matter how good I was to him, I couldn't shake your place in his heart. But I'm sick now. Dying. Let me be willful just once and be a spiteful woman." White moonlight. White moonlight. That term is really disgusting. A violent emotion rampaged through me. Before I could reply, a hand suddenly reached out from the side, pulling me with great force into a side alley. I fell on the ground in my dress, my knees and elbows scraping against the rough ground and walls, a piercing pain. Then I looked up into a pair of gloomy, frenzied eyes. Somewhat familiar, yet also strange. It was the young man in black from Suyu's bedside. "You're Joki's wife? What kind of trash dares to make you unhappy? She suffers from cancer day and night, and you? Being a happy young lady isn't enough. You have to steal the person she likes, making her last days miserable too." He pressed down the brim of his baseball cap, looking at me cruelly. "Make it hurt. Don't let her pass out." The sky was gradually turning white. Sunrise was coming, and behind the young man, a tall, menacing man stepped out, stopping in front of me. Dust flew. Why does everyone think Suyu is so pitiful? The one who has nothing is clearly me. Those fragmented images flashed through my mind again. This time, I saw a bit more clearly. When I was 6, my mother was suddenly diagnosed with late-stage breast cancer. Even after a complete mastectomy, the cancer cells had spread. When she lay in bed, her vitality fading day by day, someone came to our house. It was my aunt, her twin sister, who looked about 80% like my mother. She just naturally took her sister's place, inheriting everything that originally belonged to her. My father had no objections because he knew very well the two families had to be bound together. I was only 6 then, understanding everything vaguely. I didn't know why I had to call my aunt Mum, or why, just a month after she came, I had a half-sister with the same father. I only remember on the day my mother left, she held my hand tightly. "Xiao Xi, you must live well, live healthily." Those words later became my shackles. So much so that every time I heard Suyu say she didn't want to die, an absurd feeling welled up in me. The one who wants to live well and be loved has a terminal illness. The one who wants to die must live on with guilt. At home, I couldn't do many things because I was the eldest daughter, shouldering the Wen family's responsibilities. But my younger sister could act spoiled, could freely do whatever she wanted. When my relationship with Joki was discovered, my father had my aunt talk to me. She wore my mother's cheongsam, my mother's pearl necklace, looking at me with disdain and pity. "You want to be in love? Fine, but don't give away your first time, or you won't be valuable anymore. When CI, you're the older sister. You wouldn't want your younger sister to bear the responsibilities for you, would you?" When I was 20, she gave me 2 choices. Either marry the business partner my father couldn't secure recently, who was 20 years older than me, or go abroad to study business, come back after graduation to marry, and help manage the company. I chose the second. Shortly after returning, they started evaluating again. Who was suitable for marriage? which family to bind with to maximize the Wen family's interests. They considered rationally, clearly and thoroughly. They just never asked for my opinion. Fortunately, Joki proposed to me then. I agreed, thinking he could, like he had for many years, walk with me at the edge of the abyss, trying not to let me fall. But by then, he already had Su Yu by his side. When the hem of my skirt was torn to shreds, I finally managed to reach the stiletto heels that had been taken off and thrown aside. Then, raising it high, I brought it down with force. Warm blood splattered across my face as the man's body went limp and collapsed. Holding the blood-stained high heel, I slowly stood up, leaning against the wall. A few steps away, the young man turned his head towards me at the sound. A shadow clouded his eyes. Quite capable. I caught my breath and said to him, "It's always been your beloved Su Yu who wronged me. No matter how much you like her heart still only has Joki. Even though Joki is married, even though she's dying, she won't consider you." "Shut up!" he roared, rushing over and slapping me across the face. If you hadn't accepted Joki's proposal, they would have quickly made up after their fight. She would have been happy with Joki. My cheeks stung and burned. I looked up at him and smiled calmly. Why shouldn't I accept? If Su Yu and Joki had a fight, and then said she wanted to marry you, would you have refused her? She's dying. You have no power to cure her cancer, so you take your anger out on an innocent person like me. I paused, then softly uttered 2 words. Pathetic. If you care so much, you should go die with her. In that moment, I remembered what the serious-faced doctor had said. Miss Wen, you must find appropriate ways to vent your emotions. It would be good for you. Indeed. The young man stared at me blankly, then suddenly let out a shrill, mournful wail, slowly sliding down the wall and curling into a ball on the ground. He cried so bitterly. I just watched quietly, somewhat puzzled. These people always think they are the most pitiful in the world. Su Yu, Joki, and him all the same. I managed to straighten my tattered skirt. When I walked out of the alley, the first golden rays of the distant sunrise were just breaking through. Then, bit by bit, until the light filled the entire dark sky. A beautiful view. So whether Joki was beside me to watch it with me no longer mattered. I took a taxi to the police station to report the incident, handing over the blood-stained high heel, and asking the police if this counted as self-defense. The young female police officer looked at me, her clear eyes full of pity. Miss Wen, don't worry. The marks on you can prove it was attempted rape. But, are you okay? I said I was fine, maybe a bit hurt. But I'd tend to the wounds myself. Do you need to contact your family to come pick you up? Who could I contact? I lowered my eyes and smiled. No need. My family members all have their own things to attend to. After giving my statement, I went home, found the divorce papers I had prepared earlier, signed them, and mailed them to Joki's company. Throughout this whole process, Joki never once contacted me. But I could see from Su Yu's social media that he had taken her to Yunnan. The reason, of course, was the same one used countless times. She was dying. It was her dying wish. By the Kangshan Mountains and Erhe Lake, she sat on a swing, pushed high by him, her intact skirt fluttering in the wind. She said, Joki, after I die, bury my ashes here. I want to be a free soul. If you think of me sometimes, come here to see the view. So romantic. Even in death, she wanted to die so romantically and profoundly, making Joki remember her for a lifetime. I finished scrolling through this post and indifferently deleted Su Yu as a friend. I could actually guess Joki's thoughts. His not contacting me was a kind of self-deceptive avoidance. As if as long as he didn't tell me, silently accompanied Su Yu on her final journey, and then returned to my side, we could pretend nothing had happened and continue on. But it wasn't possible. Before leaving this city, I went to see someone. A mutual friend of Joki and me named Ki Yuan. Due to my personality, I never made many friends growing up. He barely counted as one. I'm leaving. He was biting a cigarette and stood up in shock. What? You have cancer too? I laughed dryly. Impossible. I just don't want to stay here anymore. I'm moving to another city. What about the Wen family's company and business? Don't want it. I said calmly, then repeated. From the beginning, I never wanted it. Actually, everyone knew Joki was entangled with his terminally ill ex-girlfriend. Everyone was watching my humiliation. So when I told my family about the divorce, my aunt gently said, "It's all right. For families like ours, even a second marriage won't be without value." I smiled. I have no value. Don't delude yourself. The Wen family company is returned to you. The things that belong to my mother that you've always coveted have long been yours. I said, if you don't want the scandal of the Wen family driving its eldest daughter to death to get out, then set me free. For the first time, hatred appeared in her cleared, ever-gentle eyes. As if out of revenge, she lowered her voice and said softly, "It's not your fault, AC. Your husband would rather accompany a dying woman. You really are pitiful." Now that my love and expectations for Joki had completely vanished, these words could no longer hurt me. I told Ki Yuan, "Anyway, if Joki comes asking, don't tell him where I went. Wensi, you have everything. Joki, I have nothing, just a living body left." According to Ki Yuan, Joki returned just a few days after I left. He was alone, without Su Yu. Probably she hadn't made it, but dying by the Kangshan Mountains and a Hay Lake fulfilled her final wish. Joki called me many times. I didn't answer. He then sent a message. "What does this mean? Are you divorcing me, AC?" I didn't reply. There really was no need to answer. Ki Yuan told me Joki was like an anxious trapped animal, searching everywhere for me, even going to the Wen family. When he barged in, my father and aunt were discussing whether to bring me back and marry me off to that widower over 50, but powerful. "Wensi, you didn't see Joki's expression at that time. TSK, TSK. Ki Yuan sighed to me over the phone. "And you reported it to the police before, right? The police sent a receipt record to your house and even called, saying they couldn't reach you, but the 2 attempted rape suspects had been caught." Some later news also came from Ki Yuan. Joki went to the police station, asked for the details of that day. Perhaps out of sympathy for me, the female officer told him everything in detail. Then Joki broke down. Leaving the police station, he just knelt on the roadside, crying hoarsely. Ki Yuan was with him then, watching Joki raise his reddened eyes and ask again, "Do you really know where ACI went?" "I don't know." Ki Yuan looked at him and shrugged helplessly. "You know Wensi's personality. She's unapproachable. None of us are close to her. She only ever acknowledged you." Those words seemed to completely shatter Joki. He started frantically investigating what I had been through over the years. What happened during those 3 years abroad? With each bit of my past that was uncovered, Joki broke down a little more. I think he must deeply regret the things he said to me. But spilt water cannot be gathered up. Hearing about Joki's pain didn't bring me any pleasure either. Only boundless indifference remained in my heart. Besides, whether experiencing these things then or recalling them now, I actually found it hard to feel any strong emotions. Because all along, I had lived like a walking corpse. Only Joki could stir any feeling in me, giving me a sliver of hope in my stagnant life. Now, even that had dissipated. One day Ki Yuan told me that our former high school was holding an alumni reunion, inviting outstanding alumni to attend. The invitations for Joki and me were both sent to Joki. He went back to visit the teachers. The former head teacher sighed with emotion. "All these years, you and Wensi have been together, and even got married. Truly rare. Few young couples make it this far." Joki stood there numbly, listening to the head teacher reminisce about the past. All those details he had deliberately sealed away in the corners of his memory. He must have remembered how much he loved you when he was 17 or 18. Even after the university entrance exams, when we were all drunk walking on the road, he kept saying he wanted to marry Wensi in the future. Ki Yuan said, pausing for a moment. "So when we left the school, I told him, stop pretending. Wensi was abroad for 3 whole years and you never once thought of visiting her. You were only entangled with Su Yu. Besides, she's already given up on you now." Joki is a very smart person. Just from that sentence, he guessed I was still in contact with Ki Yuan, and found a way to get my address from him. That afternoon, when I returned from the hospital with a bag of medicine, I found Joki standing at the door. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red. "AC, you're sick too, aren't you? Weren't you?" "No, I'm healthy, I said indifferently. Just some psychological and psychiatric medication. I've been taking them for many years. They won't endanger my life for now. At least not like an incurable cancer. After speaking, I moved to walk past him into the courtyard, but Joki grabbed the hem of my clothes, pleading. AC, I don't want to divorce you. I found it absurd. Because my love for him didn't vanish in an instant. It was worn away bit by bit. Slowly, through his repeated choices of Suyu. Now that Suyu was gone, he came back to me. What did that mean? So I calmly suggested to him. Actually, if you can't bear to part with Suyu, you could have gone with her. I'm not attached to her. After raising his voice abruptly, he lowered it again. I said from the beginning, Suyu has cancer. She's dying. I just felt guilty and wanted to accompany her on her final journey. I lost count of how many times he mentioned Suyu's illness in front of me. As if because she had cancer, the whole world had to unconditionally accommodate her. In the face of death, everything must yield. So I finally laughed. What's so special about that? It's just cancer. She's just dying. Is she the only one who's experienced that? For so many years I've cut my wrists, attempted carbon monoxide poisoning, and overdosed several times. I was just saved every time. When she cried in front of you saying she wouldn't live long, I actually envied her. I envy her for being able to die without restraint. If possible, I'd like to trade places with her. Let me die. Let her live well and be happy with you. Everyone gets what they want. That would be better. Joki looked at me in disbelief. His eyes were like two deep, bottomless lakes, now surfacing with wet despair and pain. AC, I didn't know. If I had known, Joki never finished that sentence. Because he couldn't speak anymore. Clearly, he was the one who made mistakes. He was the one who hurt me. Yet he cried so pitifully in front of me, as if I had done something wrong to him. Even at this moment, I didn't feel much emotional turmoil. Joki, people always change. People can change. So even though you said you'd wait for me when you were 20, but changed your mind at 21, I never blamed you. I truly liked you. I liked you so much that for all these years, only you could stir my emotions. Even when you first gave up on me and rushed to sue you without looking back, I could overlook it. It's just that this affection has been worn away by your own hands, bit by bit. Whether it's you or Sue you, or that madman who likes Sue you, your reasons for hurting me are the same. Because I have everything. I live happily, while you are always caught in dilemmas. Loving but not getting, with all sorts of shortcomings. But now, I've given up everything. I have nothing. Can you all please let me go? Joki finally disappeared from my life. Occasionally, I'd hear a bit of news about him from Pyuan. Like the 2 suspects suddenly dying in prison. Like the Zhou family suddenly starting to suppress the Wen family's company recklessly, intercepting deals even at unreasonably high prices. Finally, the Wen family went bankrupt, and the Zhou family was severely weakened as well. The pure gold shackles that had bound me for over 20 years finally crumbled to dust. After hearing this news, I was stunned for a moment, then went to a nearby convenience store to buy alcohol. Because my stomach had been washed out several times, it was always fragile and couldn't handle alcohol. Occasionally going to bars, I just order a drink and leave it untouched. But life rarely has joys worth celebrating, so I should at least mark the occasion. I took 2 small sips, felt a slight pain in my stomach, and put the can down. Just then, my phone suddenly rang. I answered. It was Joki. His voice also carried a hint of drunkenness. AC, I avenged you for you. For a moment, his voice seemed to pull me back to when I was 14. I was being bullied. He went to fight someone and came back to me with cuts all over his face, saying, I won. A CI. I avenged you for you. That was the beginning of my liking for him. But I quickly came back to reality. I'm hanging up. Joki said anxiously, panicked. Don't, AC. I just want to hear you say a few more words. I smiled. Have you been back to Kangshan and Erhei to see Su Yu? Joki didn't speak, but his breathing over the phone suddenly became rapid, filled with a deep-seated fear. I forgot to tell you. Actually, that night when you abandoned me to go to Su Yu, she added me as a friend. So I knew exactly where you traveled next, what you did, every step of the way. Jokey, I know you did many things for me, but I won't feel a shred of gratitude towards you for it. You don't deserve it. The night breeze mixed with moonlight blew gently. After a long, long time, Jokey's voice finally sounded again, choked with difficulty. Yes, I don't deserve it. AC, everything is my fault. I'm the one who should suffer. Please. Live well. I didn't say anything, just hung up the phone. 2 days ago, at the hospital for a follow-up, the doctor said my mood had improved a lot. Perhaps escaping all the heavy burdens had given me a bit more courage to keep going. It had also been a long time since I dreamed of my teenage self and Jokey. I tossed the beer can into the trash and left the balcony. Need to sleep early tonight. Tomorrow I'll go to the seaside to watch the sunrise. The end. Jokey. Epilogue. During the days when Su Yu was in the most pain, we were traveling in the Kangshan Mountains and by Erhe Lake. She wept bitterly, clutching her hair and rolling on the ground, asking me repeatedly and despairingly, why do I have to endure all this? Why did I have to get sick? I want to live. I want to live well. I could sense her intense fear and resentment, but I was utterly helpless. To make her final days a little happier, I took her to the water's edge to swing on the swings and take photos. Perhaps because of the breeze, her mood improved slightly. She turned to me and said, Jokey, when I die, bury my ashes here. I want to be a free spirit. If you ever think of me, come here to see the view. My heart ached slightly, and I said, okay. In that moment, I inexplicably thought of Wency. She didn't have Su Yu's kind of innocence and romance in her bones. During most of the time I spent with her, she was mostly just quiet. If our positions were swapped, if she were the one who was sick now, she probably would never have told me. Just like that day, after we had argued, I stayed at the hospital with Su Yu for several days without contacting her. But then a business partner suddenly called, saying he had run into Wency at the hospital. In that instant, I was suddenly filled with immense panic. Ignoring Su Yu's questions and pleas for me to stay, I rushed out of the hospital and drove straight to the place he mentioned, just in time to see Wency walking out. She was still as calm as ever, her eyes betraying no hint of anything wrong. Uneasy, I flipped through the medical report she handed me, asking, what's this about an old injury to your waist? Why haven't I heard about it? She said she'd suffered a minor injury while abroad, nothing serious. Her tone was so casual that I didn't think much of it. At that time, my mind was completely occupied with Su Yu's illness. My feelings for her were far from love. But seeing a once lively and outgoing girl tormented by a terminal illness, slowly approaching death, I couldn't help feeling some pity. When someone is dying, their final wish should be granted. I thought, as long as I accompanied her on this last journey, it would be enough. Wency, in her heart, was actually very kind. She would understand. Until later, after Wency left me. I went abroad specifically, visiting the schools she had attended and the hospitals where she had stayed, asking questions one by one. She had always had a hard time, heavy coursework, no friends, bearing immense pressure alone. She had even faced severe racial discrimination and bullying because she was Asian. They said that when the bullet struck her side, it was dangerously close, just missing her kidney. After the bullet was removed, the wound became infected. Wency was tormented by recurring pain, yet she never shed a single tear. She had very serious psychological issues and her self-destructive tendencies were quite pronounced. The doctor flipped through the medical records, telling me, over these years, she attempted suicide 7 times. Because of multiple stomach pumpings, part of her stomach tissue was even removed. He paused, then looked up at me. Are you Ms. Wen's husband? Why are you only asking about this now? Where is she? Ki Yuan had come with me. Hearing this, he let out a mocking scoff beside me. It felt as though countless bullets had pierced my heart, leaving it riddled with holes, letting in a cold, sharp wind that made it hard to breathe. With difficulty, I thanked the doctor, turned, and went out, asking Ki Yuan, did you know about this all along? Know what? He raised an eyebrow, his smile tinged with sarcasm. Jokey, have you forgotten? We didn't even know Wency at first. It was you who brought her over and introduced her to us. How would she tell us, mere acquaintances, things she wouldn't even tell you? I had no rebuttal. Waves of cramping pain rose from my heart, forcing me to bend over, curling into a ball. That day, when the police called our home, I finally learned what she had gone through after I left to find Sue Yu. My auntie, on her birthday, had experienced something so terrifying. And at that time, I wasn't by her side. I was even the root cause of it all. I hung up the phone, stood by the sofa, and suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. I asked Ki-Yuan, "Am I utterly despicable?" "No," he said. "Not despicable scum. Do you know everyone was waiting to see Wenxi's humiliation? I really don't get it. Are you out of your mind? If you liked Sue Yu, you shouldn't have married Wenxi in the first place. Since you married her, what does your ex-girlfriend's terminal illness and death have to do with you?" I had no strength to argue. I just suddenly remembered. That day I went to the hospital to see Sue Yu. She told me chemotherapy was very hard. Then, changing the subject, she took out a bank card and handed it to me. "You should take this back. You've already paid for my medical treatment. Don't transfer extra money to me anymore." Pausing, her voice choked with tears. "You actually look down on me, don't you? Being sick and only able to afford treatment because of your help." A scalding tear fell on the back of my hand. Clutching that bank card, I felt both disappointed and angry. In my heart, Wenxi had always been a gentle and kind person. How could she do this? So that day when I returned home, I did something I have regretted ever since. When I grabbed her wrist, my fingertips did feel some uneven texture, but at the time I didn't give it much thought. Wenxi wasn't one to wear jewelry, but after returning to the country, she never took off the bracelet and watch on her wrist. Actually, there had been hints all along. Why didn't I notice? How could I not have noticed? The first night after seeing Wenxi, I stood in the bathroom, facing the mirror, and ran a razor blade across my wrist. A line of blood spurted out, the stinging pain crawling up my arm. I seemed to feel nothing, just thinking of Wenxi. How much pain she must have been in. How much pain. All these years I had never once noticed. About 2 weeks later, Ki-Yuan finally noticed the dense crisscrossing scars on both my arms. He punched me in the face. "Joki, are you out of your mind?" My eyelashes trembled as I asked him, "Was Essie in as much pain back then?" "Of course not. She was in much more pain than you are now," Ki-Yuan said mercilessly. "She truly wanted to die. You're just wallowing in self-pity. If you really feel guilty, then avenge her for her. That little lackey of Sue Yu's who did those things to Wenxi is still alive and well in prison. He'll be out in a couple of years." Gradually, I came back from the edge of self-destruction. He was right. Those 2 rapists were still alive. The Wen family was still living happily and comfortably. We all needed to atone. After those 2 really died in prison, I started targeting and suppressing the Wen family's company, regardless of the consequences. Actually, the 2 companies were quite similar in scale. The Wen family went bankrupt, and the Zhou family's company was severely damaged too. My father took a whip and beat me until I was covered in blood. "I handed the family company to you, and you pull this kind of stunt? You didn't treat Wenxi well when she married you. Now that she's gone, what kind of lovesick act are you putting on?" I pressed my lips together and said nothing. That night I called her. Wenxi told me that while I was accompanying Sue Yu to Kangshan and Erhe for her final days, she had also watched Sue Yu's entire live broadcast on social media. In that moment, I understood I could never be forgiven by her. What separated us wasn't just Sue Yu's death and lies, but also my own stupidity and vileness. So, I did the last thing I could for Wenxi. I mailed her the signed divorce papers, setting her free. Later, as time passed, my mother wanted me to remarry, to start anew. I refused. I only went secretly to the city where Wenxi lived every year on her birthday. Not daring to get close, just watching from afar. Perhaps because she had left me and everything related to the Wen family, her mental state improved more and more. She also smoothly found an excellent job. I had always known she was an outstanding person. I was just blind and self-righteous. 5 years after our divorce, on Wenxi's birthday, I went as usual to secretly see her. But I found an unfamiliar man by her side. He was very tall. Even the tall Wenxi seemed petite beside him. He stepped out of a Rolls-Royce, holding a huge bouquet of flowers, smiling as he bent down to kiss her. Wency didn't refuse. I watched this scene from afar. My heart felt as if it had been sliced and shattered by some sharp tool, hurting so much I trembled. But I knew I deserved it. I should suffer it well. Not long after returning, the abnormalities in my body gradually became more and more apparent. A hospital examination revealed ILS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. As it grew more severe, Ki-Yuan came to see me in the hospital. He asked me, "Do you want to see Wency one more time?" After a long silence, harboring some vile yet naive hope, I nodded. I didn't want her pity. Yet, I also hoped that, out of pity for an old acquaintance, she might still come to see me. Ki-Yuan went out into the corridor to make the call. Unable to resist, I slowly moved to the door to listen. I happened to hear Wency's voice, as calm as ever, but with a hint of coldness. No need. I'd find it nauseating to see. The call ended. Ki-Yuan sighed and walked back in. Wency says she doesn't have time right now. Maybe later. I heard everything, I said. He looked at me with a complex expression. With difficulty, I curled the corner of my lip. Knowing she's doing well now puts my mind at ease. The sky gradually darkened and heavy rain began to fall outside. Listening to the rain, I remembered many years ago, when I first met Wency. It was also a rainy day. When she still thought of me as her first friend. I had already fallen in love with her. Yet I still lost her. After that day, I never even dreamed of Wency again.